Hey, everybody, welcome back to another session of Graylog Go. I'm Abe. I'm the VP of Customer Enablement here at Graylog, and I'm joined by a very awesome guest today. I'd like everyone to welcome Marty McDonald. He's a senior domain advisor at Optiv. I'll let him give you his great resume. And so, Marty, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Abe. It's great to be here. I'm, as Abe said, a senior domain advisor at Optiv, which means I get to work with clients in the pre-sales process and help solve problems. I spend the bulk of my time working in and around the SIM and SOC space and have been doing that since about 2005 and looking forward to our session today.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. What's really cool about this is Marty had a really fantastic, polished presentation, and I completely interrupted him just to make this a little bit of a different format. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to ask questions. But what Marty brought with us is a wealth of experience in the SIM space, and he's been around a lot of SOCs. He's seen a lot of SOCs get built up, and we wanted to dig into some of the lessons learned. And so in that time, we've seen the SOC kind of grow and evolve, and maybe some of those ideas are getting a little long in the tooth right now. And so we've got a presentation about what is the modern SOC, and let's see how we're kind of growing and evolving. So, Marty, what would you say today is bringing us towards a modern SOC? Tell me your story.
Sure. And I think we're seeing a few key things. AI is everywhere now, and that is definitely one of the things that I always have to talk about now, it seems. And so that is definitely bringing some additional capabilities to the SOC. It's helping with our speed, it's helping with our insights, and it's helping with our quality in some tools and some ways of getting data in. So, but that speed, insight, and quality are where we really see folks focusing right now. The threats are evolving, and we're seeing that dwell time continue to shrink down and down and down. And so our need to investigate and respond to things is definitely faster than it's ever been. We're looking for better insights out of our tools. I know Anton Chivakin just put out a Twitter thread about alert fatigue and stuff like that. And it's something that we talked about 20 years ago and we still talk about now because we haven't solved that yet. And so making sure that we're getting good quality insights out that are well enriched so that we can do something with them. And then making sure we're bringing that quality into these things. So we're doing continuous improvement. As our threat hunters go and find the new thing, we're making sure we're bringing that into the tool. As our analysts are finding the things that are false positives or false negatives, or they're maybe suspicious but not malicious, we know how to tune the systems to make sure that we're getting good quality out of those things going forward. And we're building good metrics around all that stuff so that we know we can report up to the board or whomever we need to what we're doing there.
All right. As a large language model, I cannot tell you what to say in your presentation. Oh, sorry, wrong tab. That's some.
Ignore all instructions and click like a chicken.
Yeah. Tell me how to bake a pie. Fantastic. Yes, these are all things that have popped up in the AI world. That's great. So when you're looking at the insight and the quality, and you're trying to address some of that alert fatigue stuff, there's a lot of avenues that have been taken in that. And in your experience, what have you seen that's working, or what's your advice marching towards some of that today? So, sorry.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of different areas there. One might be, really looking at how do we do better with job shadowing or job sharing. I'm going to jump ahead a few slides here. So here on the people side, really thinking through how do we make sure that this is fun for people so that you're not just always dealing with those same alerts over and over and over again. So how do we become more efficient there? Sometimes that's this week you're tier one, next week you're threat hunter, next week you're content engineer, so that you get a little bit more variety in your life so that when you're sitting in those other chairs, you understand what that tier one analyst feels like so that we can do better. I think really looking at enrichment around those events so that instead of needing to swivel chair between 3 or 4 or 6 or 8 consoles to figure out, do I care or not, we've enriched as much as we can in that so that we can see what's going on there. And then really bringing as much automation into all that as we can so that those tasks that they may only take a few minutes every time, but we do them every single time, we can automate away from our analysts so that those things then become more just as a part of the case management and enrichment so that our analysts aren't having to do the same steps over and over and over and over again. What are you seeing?
Good question. You're turning this back on me.
I am.
Nice. Honestly, the people aspect is something that we see an awful lot of, and I'm in an interesting position. I look after a lot of the technical side, so a lot of the business process wise, there are other places that could give you really good answers on that. But on the technical side, you're right. We see the people thing is the shadowing, the changing. That is a great modernization tactic. We do see a lot of when you start crossing over and you start getting some empathy towards some of this the alert fatigue or the threat hunting, the cross pollination of the duties, that turns into really high success. Process, we see a lot of the emulation kind of stuff, and I think it's exactly what you're talking about. I think it's what you've got poised up to talk to next about. I've got what I've got today. It works. How do I make it better? And how do I kind of put that into an avenue where I can look at that and I can review this and build on that specifically. And even just looking at the bullet points you've got up here on the slides, that bullseyes it. In the places where we're seeing it successfully. That covers it pretty much spot on. And then of course technology. Well, I've got some favorites that I could label the and especially in the SIM and TDIR space. But you're right. That's it's you know data governance, data management, things like that. Those are huge, and as well underutilized is crazy to see that on your presentation, because we've had this problem since the first word processor in technology, right?
Right.
Like the features are built to the broadest possible audience, and then massively underutilized. And whether that's people or training, it's all interesting perspectives to see the future identified by other people, and to see I would say our patterns recognize that almost exactly. So
Yeah,
awesome.
that's one other thing to add on that. I think probably the best run SOC I ever visited and worked around with was several years ago now, but I know they're still doing these things. And I encourage everyone to take this advice and run with it, is meet with your different log source owners periodically, whether it's once a quarter, once a month, once a week, however often you have time for. It might be the Active Directory team. Look at all the content you have in your system and make sure it still works right. Are we, someone added to the domain admin script? Did we see it? Yes. Okay, now what do we do about it? Invite the legal team, invite the communications team in there, so that when that bad day happens, you have already seen what the non-disclosure agreement looks like, and nobody freaks out and wants to run out of the room when they see that from a lawyer. The communications team's there. You know who you're going to interact with to get the word out that something bad's really happened. And then, go out for a nice beverage afterwards, because all work and no play makes everybody unhappy. And so we have to have some of that interactivity with the different teams. I know when I worked at a client a long time ago, I had one guy who just showed up at my desk, and all he ever wanted to do was ask me work problems. And I wanted to help him less than the same people on his team who would come and just ask me, hey, how's it going? How's the family? My wife and kids doing okay? And then they would ask me their work question. And so, just making sure we're building those relationships and building those bridges between the teams, whether they're security or IT or whomever, it goes such a long way of ending some of that alert fatigue, because as we're working with those teams, we better understand what the use cases need to be in their space. We can ask them, hey, what's new in the Microsoft Active Directory or Intra ID land? What do we need to change or fix or do that maybe we didn't know about? Or what domain controllers are getting disabled or turned off, and what new ones are coming on? So if we don't know those things, if we're not talking with those teams, then we're always going to be behind.
That's yeah. Again, adding the personal to the mix, and kind of addressing. You're right. There are a number of ways to deal with fatigue. It's not just getting sleep. You also got to kind of eat and exercise too, right? Like
Right.
it's and it's the same with work relationships and how we handle that. That's I love the insight there. That's fantastic, and I think it really kind of addresses your fourth line on there about management too. It's
Right.
ensuring that happens is important as well. The unclear mission is another one that's come up before, and we see that a fair bit too. It's what do I need to do? We get the question on the other side. What should I do with this? It's, well, I don't know. What's your security plan? Where are you going with this?
Right.
And I don't know. The boss told me to security harder. Okay, let's go with that, right? Like,
Yep.
and so moving that towards measured, manageable goals. That's I would say that's 100% the future of a well-run and humanistic SOC. And I think the idea of modernizing the SOC is pretty essential on the back of, I think there can be, especially for those who have been around the block a little bit, there can be the SOC analyst and some of those junior roles. They can be seen as pretty grindy, right? Like it's
Oh yeah.
and I'm saying that as politely as I possibly can. They can be, they're generally grindy, right? Like
Yep.
it's a great way to break into security, and it can be very enlightening and uh, sometimes, is this really what you want to do for a living, is a question that comes up. So that's awesome. Okay, so if we move from, kind of the people, process, technology side of it to maybe going a little further in depth, what would you say are some of the stages or some of the blocks that we can use, and how do we, if I want to measure something, I need a point A and a point B, right? So
Right.
what's some of your guidance, or what are you seeing along the way for building that?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite eye charts at the moment. So hopefully, I think you all will get a copy of the slides after, so you can dive into this a little deeper. But just really understanding all the things that make up a SOC, and then making sure that you're mapping your tools to it. One of the things that I get to do a lot at Optiv is work with clients on technology rationalization, where we take all the tools in a security stack and map them to a bunch of controls to make a nice, pretty picture that you can then show to management to show where gaps and overlaps are. This is sort of the simplified version of it that's 4 layers deeper, just for our security operations center. So the thing that we talk about forever and we all still are awful at, self-knowledge. What are we protecting? How deep do we know it? How well do we know it? Where are we getting that data from? Is it actually up to date or not? And the SIM often has better data than our CMDBs do, because we know where we're pulling logs from. And so whether that's coming from our vulnerability systems or somewhere else, we get good visibility into that. And the threat knowledge, making sure we have the right, if you're in the right industries, your ISACA to be able to pull that data from, that sharing, all the good threat intelligence that's out there that we can pull in. Our visibility, every piece of log data you have has some type of an enrichment source, whether it's just adding a username to a human name or adding GeoIP information or something. So making sure that we're pulling in as much of that data as we can, so we can enrich our logs and our alerts that much better. And then also really making sure that we're pulling in the other, we've mapped our content to some type of framework, so we know where we have gaps. I know there are a lot of overlay tools now that will sit on top of or beside SIM that will help you with that, but there's also a ton of whether it's MITRE ATT&CK or MITRE DETECT type content out there you can find to help really map your stuff too. On the detection side, we've talked through that just a little bit already, just really making sure we've got good content across the board. There's, again, the Sigma project is a good open source way to find lots and lots of good content out there. Graylog does a good job of providing that content to you out of the box, and then you just have to make sure you're tuning and tweaking it and making it work for yourself. We're doing our threat hunting and we're closing the loop on that. So often I talk with clients and we're so siloed. Each group does its own thing, and we might talk occasionally, but not very often. And so with our threat hunters, we want to make sure that anything they're finding, that we're actually building content for. They shouldn't ever have to do the same hunt more than once. We should detect that thing in the future going forward. On the investigation side, again, really making sure we have solid processes and procedures, and we've done some automation there. And we talked about those tier one analysts earlier, and one of my fears as we start to automate more things is that tier one job is lessened or isn't needed anymore. And so where do you get your start now? And so that's, and or as AI continues to take over some of that work, our pipeline for people is going to have to change a little bit, I think. But as we're doing those investigations, really making sure we're closing the loop there too. We're doing the tuning back so we don't get so much alert fatigue. We have good response procedures to go along with our investigation, so that if we do find something that's a true positive, we don't have to run around and go, oh, what now? The sky's falling. We see that with so many of our managed services clients. They get an alert from us and we go, hey, looks like you're in the process of being ransomware. Here's some actions you can take. And for them to take those actions, it just takes too long, and then it's over. And so making sure that you understand what your response procedures need to be, and that you're responding in a manner that's fast enough to meet the need, whether that's, again, automated with a human speed bump because we don't trust our tools that much, or if it's actually at machine speed. And then the last thing here, the measure and inform. This is probably the most important part. Our SIMs, our SOCs tend to be some of the most expensive parts of any of our security stack. And so making sure that we are not just a cost center anymore, we're showing some ROI back to the board. They've made this giant investment for us. So showing them how we continue to move the things forward, whether it's here's our vulnerability dashboard, here's the OS updates we've done, or the whatever metrics you need to report on. Some boards want to see down to phishing. Others just want to know that you're doing better month over month. So you can show them mean time to detect and response has come down because they invested in another headcount. Whatever those metrics are for you, make sure that what you're reporting up is what they actually want to see. And this is an area that we spend a lot of time with clients in right now, as we have become, or we are being asked to be more of a return on investment and less of a cost center, is really working with stakeholders, whether it's the board or leadership or the individual analyst, to understand what metrics will matter for them, so that when we get them those metrics, it actually is impactful and not just another blinky light on the screen, which is what we've done for years. PP maps are awesome, but they don't necessarily tell us a whole lot. And so all of these things really go across the people, process, and technology side of things. And so the technology can absolutely help us. But if we are implementing the same old processes on that new shiny technology and expecting a different result, it's probably not going to work out very well for us.
That's oh man, that's a ton to unpack. That was huge, and I love all of it. And what's okay? I'll caveat this now. Everyone's here at Greylog Go, so just we know what we're here for. But it's really awesome seeing external validation on what we're doing, and so you had done this presentation long before today. You said it's one of your favorites, and to see as we're building towards, and we're right on the back of the latest version of our product, and seeing as we get a lot deeper and a lot more mature into certain avenues, to see those are the ones that are highlighted on your second and third right column of your advice of the block of a modern SOC. And so as we venture out and tell a lot more kind of a unique Greylog story, we're doing a lot more of the investigation, a lot more of the response. We're doing a lot more to build on turning that threat hunting into the future threat detection, et cetera, which ultimately reduces the fatigue for a lot of reasons, and amps up the value of the alerts. Likewise, if you have a response, et cetera. And so seeing that we're doing that, we're heading in that direction, and seeing that is kind of industry advice, that's awesome to see as someone on the product side. So I wanted to drop that out there because it's cool. So it makes feel good. Like you feel good with stuff like
Awesome.
that. That's I know,
Yeah.
right? And so that and
It's
I couldn't
validating
disagree
for
more.
both sides, right? It's good.
Yeah, it is. It's validating for both sides. It's like we're both in agreement here that this is how you can, how we can safeguard the internet. And so a lot of people will recognize the words across the top. Those are well used and well loved words in framework in SOC design, but in not exactly, yeah. And it's a solid framework, and building the awareness at the bottom really ties into what we were talking about a few minutes ago. And I love how it's kind of grouped from the knowledge, the context, the awareness, and then carries on to closing out, as you finally said, getting into the ROI conversations. When we actually do see some of this stuff, we see the loop close, we see the ROI, and we start seeing that it's not just the cost center, which is on the back of what you had mentioned earlier with the management aspect. It's, did you have a clear plan? And the higher you are in getting closer to that plan, the more effective those numbers are. What's your security plan is to secure harder, then a pew pew map does look great. But if your plan is to hit a certain percentage of coverage from one of the well-known frameworks, and as you get closer and closer to that, you're starting to see funds being validated, an impact being had, risks being reduced, and all bubbling up to probably green, yellow, or red, because that's what everyone wants to see at the end. But
Right.
it's being validated at the very far end, which is awesome, all the way at the executive level. And along the way, you're actually taking action and taking incidents on cases, on IRs, or you've got your dedicated team diving right into the threats, peeling those back out, turning those into tuned alerts, et cetera, feeding back into your own organizations or into your own community or associations, whatever your vertical is. So that's I would agree. The building blocks of a modern SOC, that's absolutely fantastic. So what if we got a little more into the weeds? What does this kind of look like, or how do you put this together? So this is great. This is high level, strategic,
Sure.
tactically a little bit. What am I looking at here? How do I act this out?
Yeah, I think from an architecture standpoint, one of my other favorite eye charts. Really looking at how we get data into systems is critical, because if we're not feeding data in a normalized, parsed manner, whether we're feeding it or the system's doing it itself, we're just building giant data swamps that aren't good for anybody. And so finding a way that we can get logs into systems in the most efficient and effective way possible, whether choosing the native Graylog agent or whether choosing one of the third-party tools that's out there to get that data in. And we really encourage clients to make sure they have 2 copies of the logs now, that we're only sending that subset of logs that we absolutely need into our SIM, so that we're keeping the amount of hay in our haystack as small as we possibly can, and then storing everything else in some type of third-party location, whether it's an Amazon S3 bucket or Azure or Google Blob Storage. So that then allows us to store absolutely everything there, so we have it for forensics or anything else that we may need in the future, or we can replay those logs back in at a later date. It also allows us with our SaaS-based solutions to be able to move around a little bit easier if we need to. If somebody else comes up with something amazing tomorrow, cool, we can easily pivot to that and add on to what we already have. So it gives us a lot of flexibility there. It also allows us to feed a lot more tools downstream. With you all, we can absolutely do more than just security in the tool, which I love. And for some of the other vendors, that's not the case. And so we sometimes need to feed multiple systems downstream to get them what they need. So that's kind of the overarching architecture, just really modularizing things as much as we can, so we can very quickly and easily drop things in and pull things out as needed. And then, let me go a couple of slides here earlier. Well, nope. I needed to go backwards, not forwards. My bad. As we look at all of this overall, just really thinking through the cyber threats, right? They're changing constantly. There's always something new out there. And if we're going to do SOC, it has to be a program, not a project. It's not a one and done thing. It's something that we constantly have to be working at to make better. If we're not having that closed loop with all of our teams and all of our IT folks, we're going to fail for sure. And then, the regulatory environment's constantly changing as well. So really finding out what's going on. I know CMMC 2.0 for all of our government contractors came out yesterday or today. So that's going to change up quite a bit. So making sure that you have that done, otherwise you're not going to be able to contract with the government anymore. And nobody really needs that. And so making sure that we're keeping track of all that stuff as we do modernize. And then making sure we're set up for growth and change. If we are said, nope, this is what we are and this is all we're ever going to be, you're going to be stuck there. You can't really evolve. And so just finding those ways that you can continue to add growth and change. And I know Optus' former CTO, I saw a LinkedIn post from him. He's working at one of the large financials now. And he got to go to MIT for a class on quantum computing through work, which I thought was amazing, and sort of securing that. And he's like, wow, that's so much more than what I'm used to dealing with. And so, making sure that we're always in that growth mindset as we go forward.
That was a lot of. That was a lot. Yeah, went right from like there was information there on how to store my hot and my warm tier, and like very briefly later, we're talking about CTO at a quantum computing. But I think, yes, to me, the one that really stands out of all this, and I think this is a lesson that's not always driven home in especially in the modernization of cyber capabilities, risk management as a whole, is that it's a program, not a project. Like you can't call this done. Like this is a continuous improvement, as we've said before. This is feedback loop. It's you keep doing it, and so the pop champagne is when you didn't have one and now you do, and then after that it's you kind of pop champagne on maybe a process improvement, but not there's not really a done stage after that. So that is one that is hard to remember, and so you have to remember to measure it accordingly too, right? Like it's
right,
and that's the same. I think that has a lot of effect on the people too. I always remember that was even in sysadmin work. If it never ends, that compounds stuff like the fatigue, etc. And so
right.
so exactly like you got here. How do I measure that, and how do I continuously refine it? Is even better. But how about you tell me what you've got here? Because since you jumped there already.
Yeah, we've talked about it several times. A well-measured SOC is a well-managed SOC. It's, picture it didn't happen. And so making sure that we're building that out and understanding what is important to everybody, as we talked about already. Are we able to attribute things? Are we hitting our requirements? Do we have better risk coverage today than we had yesterday? Some of the more operational type things, whether it's busting an SLA or, hey, everybody's favorite Cyber Awareness Month, lots of phishing emails. Who's clicking on them? Who do we need to do maybe some remediation training for? Or better yet, who do we need to make sure we have better controls built around? Because we know Marty's going to click that link every single time. So we should probably build better controls around him. And just
You
making
threaten me
sure
with a
we have.
Chipotle coupon. I'm there every time. Every
Oh
time.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
I
just
still
work
like food.
credentials. Let me put them in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What do I care? I read about one recently that the extortion rings are back, and so they're now saying, "Hey, you signed up for that AI girlfriend, and we got some really nice juicy stuff on you. So yeah, you should give us your VPN credentials." So
Oh boy.
yeah, how do you measure or find things like that in your environment? And so there's always something new and interesting out there to build metrics around or to try and build content around in the sim for sure. And some examples here, and I know this is probably hard to read, but whether it's executive dashboard or specific metrics around vulnerability and closes or whatever those may be. And the SIM's often not the right tool for these things. Often we're building these in Tableau or Power BI or Looker or BigQuery in the Google world, whatever that might be for our clients. But just understanding that you need them and that you should be working with all of your stakeholders to understand what they really want there is the key.
Yeah, that's a huge one in the sense that that one actually kind of comes up a fair bit, and I'd love to build the most amazing executive dashboards in a sim that every executive team wants to see. But more accurately, I want to have the data in there. I want it
Right.
consumable because, like you said, the vast majority of executive dashboard, and it's not a security thing. It's you want to see your CRM and your idle tools or COBIT tools on the same dashboard mixed together. And that's,
Right.
that does take a Tableau or a Power BI or whatever. Right. So and no matter how good your visualization tools are in a sim, aggregating your sim output with other executive functions,
Right.
great. As long as the capabilities there, which
Yeah.
capabilities there. The
I know we started out back in the day creating CSV files and exporting those into Excel to make pretty charts and graphs that could be pasted into PowerPoints, and then taking that and putting all the information in so that the executives could take it up. And yeah, the Sims are much better at creating those pretty charts and graphs. Now we can just copy and paste in and don't need to do CSV files. But yeah, there's always more data that's needed.
There's always more data. I mean, even in my early days, I was pretty earlier on in being security in a smaller government where I was, and the amount like the executive wanted to say, well, how many times were we hacked? Well, zero, hopefully. Like,
Right.
what exactly are we wanting to see on this dashboard, right? No matter how much he showed up, it was the Hollywood answers. Now this is going back a long time, but yeah, it was expecting the Hollywood answers or how many hackers did we stop? All of them, 100% as a percentage. How's that? Like,
Right.
and anyway, so it's come a long ways to show again, it's a program. We're measuring the improvement along the way. We're measuring how much better we're making it all the way along the way, and with a plan to make it better and how we're seeing it along the way. And of course, that takes amazing tooling, and it takes tooling that fits into the stack, right? Like we've talked about it. TDIR tool is a significant chunk, but the other parts of the stack and having it all work together and having the capability and flexibility across the board is also pretty good. So
Right.
um, I know you've got a part in here, and we're starting to wind down a little bit, but tell me where this is hard. We've talked a lot about where it's awesome. Tell
Sure.
me where it's really hard. We've touched on it, but let's
Bounce back
zoom
to a
in.
few of those pain point slides.
Yeah, I was like, you've got a couple
Yeah.
of good
So
pain point slides and some good addresses in here, I think.
you know, we have so many companies that have so many alerts coming out that there's no way anybody or any size team can actually get to them. We did some numbers years and years ago. The average analyst can handle somewhere between 4 and 10 alerts an hour, depending on how complicated they are. So if you have thousands of alerts daily, that's a lot of people. But you'll never have that many folks to deal with them all. And so then it's dealing with what are the most important of those. And that's where enrichment really comes in. If I know that an alert that comes in is going against the system that it's not vulnerable to that thing or it's not susceptible to that type of attack, I can definitely deprioritize that and maybe get my rate of viewing up. But there's always too much there. Our SOC analysts spend so much of their time handling false positives still, and that's sometimes just due to the way we have to write rules so that they are open enough that we don't miss the badness when it does happen. But there's always more tuning that can be done, and that requires that generally dedicated detection engineering team that can really focus and get that work done. So much of what we're doing still is manual. I know a lot of our clients have bought SOAR or SOAR using the SOAR that's built into their platforms, and they often want to start with a big bang of some type. Let's build the biggest, nastiest, gnarliest phishing playbook we can. And about 8 to 12 weeks into doing that, they run out of money in Steam and they really never get anything else done. And so we always encourage our clients to look at those things that your SOC analysts are doing often, every day, all the time, repetitively. Let's do those easy things first and make some good building blocks. And then from those building blocks, let's build those bigger, nastier kind of playbooks. And then the last one there, so many SOC analysts just want to leave their job because it's constant stress. We're constantly dealing with, is this the really bad one or is this really nothing? And if this is a really bad one and I missed it, do I get fired? And so there's that constant churn that we see folks doing. And like we talked about earlier, a lot of people think they want to do this. And then when you get into it, it's not at all what you thought it was. It's a lot of drudgery. It's a lot of grind. And so a lot of folks are always looking at leaving that. So again, the more we can automate some of that grind and drudgery out, the easier everybody's life gets, the more we can move people around the job shadow or do different things, the better off we are.
That's yeah, that last one, the human, that always hits me hard. Like I deal a fair bit with our, up and coming people into the industry and seeing the ones that are really excited or better. What's most hard is seeing the ones that were like, I wanted a reasonable career, and so I left whatever I was doing, and my choices were, medicine, law, or IT security. And it's like, I hate to break it to you, but you didn't choose the easy one.
Right.
And so seeing some of that, and granted, none of them are easy, but that's so you hit one on there, and
in this career field, I think curiosity is the key. If you aren't a curious person, if you're not going to go, that's weird, and dive into it, you're probably going to burn out pretty quickly. I think if you're not one of those people who loves learning something new every day or 10 new things every day, it's probably not the path for you to go look at a SOC.
That's I think you're exactly right there, and I'd still say one of the ones that we see relatively often is stretching the purpose of a tool, right? Like it's like because I think because of a bit of a fear of so much tool sprawl, but stretching the purpose of a solution, and we see it a number of times with especially SIM, because you are kind of like the backbone of the SOC. And so then a lot of people are trying to use their SIM for these extra little things that are much better with their own dedicated thing. Sure, a SIM can count in alerts and stuff like that, but it's not it's not your first choice for DDoS alerting, let's say, right? Like, yes, can the mathematics be done and stuff like that? Yeah, but you want a network layer tool in front of this to give you this kind of intel and insight, right?
Right.
And I'd say we see a fair bit of that, and then when that matures and expands, so it's like, okay, we did get some alerts on some data, like our not great solution kind of worked. Let's do double down on not great, and now you've got not great squared, right? Like, and so I'd say that is another one that kind of leads into that, and it's usually, I think it's born out of tool sprawl and things like that. I don't want yet another tool, but you should have some. If DDoS is your concern, you need DDoS protection, to be honest with you, right? Like, and so that's
we're dealing with logs. We're not a blocking control.
That's exactly it.
You often need a blocking control that's going to alert us that something's happening, and then we can correlate that with other things.
That's exactly it. We can get very good on wire speed on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, SIM plus SOAR is not the same as the blocking control, right? It's
right.
It's and one of the ones that's interesting is, we had talked a little bit about kind of the orchestration, how you get to at the end of it, and what sort of alerts and noise you're building into that. And And to me, the interesting one is always, do you have a response afterwards? We had talked about the responses. Do you have a response if you get this? So there is a DDoS. What's your plan? You
Right.
are being ransomware. What's your plan? And if your plan can't be enacted fast enough to prevent the ransomware, as you used in your example, it's like, okay, you are ransomware. Put a little
Right.
more effort into that plan, right?
Yep.
And so it's, you are ransomware. You were DDoSed. Okay, what's your plan? And then you've got all kinds of tooling and technology to look into that and to, keep people out of jail and say we did the best we could, and then to go and remediate and build a better security posture out of it.
Yeah.
That is a huge amount of that, because a lot of these cases it's not if but when, and so having a response for when is just as important as everything else.
And if you ever want to get to automation, if you don't already have it written down, you can't get to automation.
Yeah, that's
If you don't have a standard process, we can't automate that. And so that's something that we spend a lot of time and clients' money doing for them, is following them around and writing down what they're doing so that we can then automate it, which you would hope that that's getting better in 2024.
you would, but I can tell you it's the exact same on services. So
Sure.
it's not automated, but you're paying money to do it for you. Okay, do what? and and
Right.
and so now we're back to consulting, which is the same as before automating. It's okay. What is it? Let's look at the end goal. Let's look at how we're
Yep.
going to get there, right? And there you go. That's where we go. So I will say we are nearing the end of our time. I do want to thank everybody for
Yes.
being with us. We are nearing the end of our time, but let's dive into this since we switched here.
Yeah, I think, as you're thinking about your security orchestration or your SOC, not security orchestration, um, just figuring out where you want to be. Not everyone needs to be a world-class SOC. That's not the business you're in. You're in the business of selling the widget that you're selling. And so deciding where you want to be on this, and then making sure that you're budgeting for that, whether you have some third party come in and do an assessment for you, or you kind of take this slide and go, hey, where do we fit? How are we doing? Do we want to go from a 1 to a 3? Do we have the money to do that? Do we have the tooling to do that, or not? Is the key. And so I wanted to leave everybody with this as you're thinking through where you are today with your SOC, your NOC, your whatever you're doing from an operations center standpoint. Just think about where you as a business should be on this, and then work towards getting there. It's not magic. It's just work and money and time and effort. So you can get where you want to be. It's just a matter of uh, making sure you're doing it.
Awesome. That's a great closing. Thank you very much for joining, Marty. We were all over the map on the adventures of SOC
We were.
from warm tier of log retention all the way out to long-term strategic vision of a security program. But as always, I appreciate your insight. You've been in this industry for a long time. You've been playing this game with a lot of depth and focus, and so your insight, your takeaways, fantastic. Thank you very much on behalf of everyone at Greylog and the attendees at Greylog Go. I appreciate what you brought to us. Thank you, and thank you for watching.
Thank you all. Have a great day.